countries presented roadmaps, national roadmaps, plans, networks for the whole country. So we have some presentations in this session, and I pass now the comment to the chair of this session, Arturo Sanchez.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for come back and be there. So just by chance, and I'm sorry that it was not really planned, the first presentation is about the Venezuelan contribution. And due to a change, I will be the speaker of this slide. So sorry that I need to share myself, but I promise to be on time. And after, as we did in the morning and yesterday, essentially, one by one, please the speaker be ready, and try to save, obviously, the conversation back to the end. And as you know, also we have the Slack channel where we can start to post any question. But the idea is, once again, to reach the end, and from there we have the opportunity to discuss between us many different points that for sure we will have to mention here. So I guess I can start. So again, this presentation is on behalf of a large group of people, Venezuela that is living in the country, and many Venezuelans that of course are living abroad, and it's a heterogeneous network, and you will see a little bit about this. This presentation was also prepared by Jose Antonio López, the Universidad Central de Venezuela. And okay, let's start. Basically. So let's first, the summary on this paper was try to give you a scientific context of the Venezuela in terms of, obviously, of the physics and the fields that we are touching in this conference. So just to give you an idea in terms of the astronomy and astrophysics, and also, of course, the high energy physics, have been a story of about 60 years of continuous formalization, the research in the different institutions and the public universities in the country. So here on the right, just map, let's say, to try to give you an idea of the different institutions, all public universities, and also research institutions that started to again, more than 6 decades ago, to generate knowledge, and obviously also capacity and training for the students over the past years. So have been these historical strengths in areas like, especially in theoretical high energy physics, again, astronomy and astroparticles, field theory, gravitational, general analytical, and numerical relativities, and for string membrane theory. So have been a strong effort there, and obviously combined always with the schools and several events that have been essentially growing this community. So from the 80s of the past century to the postgraduate in fundamental physics become massive. So each of these institutions I put it here are obviously not all the universities in the country, but those that have physics as programs in undergraduate and the postgraduate level. And of course, research was also done in the mentioned activities. So going a little bit more into the scientific context, in the 90s, once again, last century, we pick here specific examples that were very important for the development of the different research fields in the country. So just to give you an example, we have what is called Se Calcula, that was one of the center for the national calculus, yes, of scientific computing that was installed in Venezuela, particularly in the Universidad de los Andes in Mérida. And from there, essentially, was one of the first places in Latin America giving in terms of studying the high performance computing, how to install internet and all these things that, of course, now we give for granted in many places. Also in astronomy, we have an observatory that is also in the Andes, about 3,600 meters there, and also have been a kind of school, not only for the research, but also to the training on how to use this equipment, and of course, how to develop collaboration with other observatories around the world. The last mention here, not less important, is the medical physics. We have a lot of research, and have been several institutions, have been a lot of focus in the in the research in medical physics. For example, the IVIT, that is the Venezuelan Institute for Scientific Research, and also, of course, the Universidad Central de Venezuela. So all these essentially have a very positive impact in the research and the clinical area. So something that is very practical use in the country. So, of course, in terms of the present threats, is without going to the details, and then you listen the news and etc. Have been essentially the brain drain that the academic community have been suffering, and more recently also the students community, so the young people, but essentially have been a considerable decrease of in the staff in the university and research institution. So this is, of course, they had the impact in the training of the new people, the students, and have been compromising the continuity of several research. So this, of course, has been something very important that has been happening for the last years, and we unfortunately continue happening. So there have been no discussion. Yes, mechanism of how to call this and how to address this shortly. So the continuity of the current autonomous regime in the Venezuela public universities is having essentially given passing through a difficult situation, because it's essentially very much attached to the government money funding and the current regulation. So other threat that we may have there is that the change in the autonomy of the university may have an impact in the near future. So having also, just to give you an idea here, Jose also wanted to, put in a picture of having several threats, not only in terms of the academics and the lack of, let's say, of the people that is like professors and trainers there, but also several attempts to minimize the autonomy of the universities. Once again, most of them are public. But having also a reaction of, and this reaction have been in terms of the construction of the network. So we go into details, have been several research groups and several individual researchers based different places of the world. And this is, for example, wanted to illustrate in this map on the right. This is just the institution of the authors that signed this white paper, just to give you an idea. But I look into ways to strengthen these links, to continue the collaboration, to continue to produce knowledge also, but even more important, to keep the capacity training, to keep the production of, not the production, so the training of the students with putting a small piece by each of us and try to create a much greater project. So for example, one of these projects have been Cevale 2B, that have been a project we started already 6 years ago with the idea to teach a little bit about what we do in terms of high energy physics. So most of the members have been are high energy physics, let's say, collided in research. But little by little more researchers from other countries also have been joined to this effort and have been a very successful idea of how to train students in fields that are not particularly, let's say, still very well known into the universities in our region. And also, for example, more recently in terms of how to help in this case, not only the students, but also the professors that are still there, still teaching and helping, of course, locally in all this effort, because obviously we need people on the ground, let's say, to run many of these programs. Have been a joint effort between the Physics Without Frontier program of the ICTP here in Trieste and several universities to give fellows to the professors that are again teaching at universities in Venezuela. And more recently, we have this proposal from LA-CoNGA Physics that is much larger than Venezuela. Of course, you will hear about this in this very same session, but again, having different programs that you can see that have been developed by the community in order to keep these links, keep the training, and keep the collaboration. So again, the proposal is exactly that one: continue developing and partnering and executing this capacity building project. Continue to maintain the local research group and the postgraduate program. So try to keep obviously the motivation, but also practical help and how this can be done. Develop and execute projects in data analysis focuses obviously in the reproducible research practice. So this is something that we have been focused a lot, because even with the difficulties that we have, we still have the strength to say to develop ways to help to analyze data. We have been using a lot of open data to teach there, and this can be also a way to enter into different other fields or even other collaboration, you know, where we already have the expertise of how to deal with this. For example, LHC data, just to give an example. So make available to Venezuelan community practical help, consultancy, and support in these transversal areas. Once again, one of the keys have been the teaching, the training in computer and software development, that of course is very, very useful, basically no matter what our students and our researchers wanted to do. And this is basically what we wanted to mention to you. Once again, here is the link for the rest of the white paper. And thank you so much for your attention. So again, because I am here to sharing, I would like to call this time Carlos Sandoval, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. I will be mute. Just let me know when to pass the next one, Carlos.
Okay, so I'll put my camera up for the talk. First of all, thanks to the organizers for the invitation. I will share with you the main input to this initiative from the Colombian network on high energy physics, on experimental high energy physics. Can we go to the next slide, please? So basically, this is on behalf of the Colombian network on high energy physics, which is basically a group of people working on different aspects and topics around high energy physics. There is a pure theoretical high energy physics, experimental, but also cosmology and areas around these topics. I will present the very basic status on three main areas: the LHC experiment contributions, and contributions to neutrino experiments, and contributions in cosmic ray experiments. This map here shows you the expand of the different groups working on all these different experiments. Next one, please. So participation in the LHC experiment started in 2006 at CMS, and then continued to grow during the last 14 years. And we have now groups taking part in all four of the major LHC experiments: Atlas, CMS, LHCb, and ALICE. Most recently, we joined Atlas at Universidad Nacional. All of these groups do several things, both in physics and instrumentation and service tasks. Can we go to the next slide? So in physics, the physics groups work on many searches for beyond standard model signatures, like charge Higgs, supersymmetry, invisible Higgs decays, heavy neutral leptons, dark matter searches, but also B physics, especially on the LHCb experiment, of course. There is work on charm quark physics, quarkonia exotics, BC meson decays for leptonic universality tests, B meson differential cross-section production measurements. But we not only do physics, we have recently started taking part in many other tasks, and there is a lot of interest in the different groups in doing detector work and taking part in not only in the data taking, but also in the upgrade activities that are going on at the LHC. So can we go to the next one, please? In all the 4 experiments, there's a lot of work going on in the different groups. Is not only centered around computing, although computing is one of the main areas, of course, where it has been traditionally easier for us to contribute, but there is also some development in different areas. At Atlas, we're involved in the upgrade for the new inner tracker detector. On CMS, the groups have been involved for many years in muon RPC detector development. And at LHCb, there's work going on the tracker association tool for the experiment. And in particular, the ALICE group at Universidad Industrial de Santander in Bucaramanga. They specifically work on designing chips for the TPCs of the ALICE detector. They are for now mainly only working on the detector side of ALICE, and but they're working on trying to join forces with the physics groups there to also do some physics studies. Next slide, please. The neutrino experiments efforts started maybe a bit later than the LHC initiatives, and maybe from 5 years ago, groups started to join the DUNE experiment and the NOVA experiment. And here the work has been mainly centered around developing the detector. Of course, in DUNE, that's the only thing possible now. And can we go to the next slide, please? You probably saw a detailed description of all the efforts going on in the neutrino experiments from a talk this morning by Davis Moreno. The main involvement for the DUNE detector is on the photon detection system in very close collaboration with groups in Brazil and the US. And in the NOVA experiment, there's a lot of work on data taking, data analysis, and basically just doing physics analysis. And there are also, in total, there are 5 universities currently taking part in these experiments. Next slide, please. Finally, there are other groups working on cosmic ray experiments in Auger and the LAGO experiment. More recently, Universidad de Medellín joined the Auger experiment, and they, together with the Universidad Industrial de Santander, work on cosmic ray air showers modeling and simulation, atmospheric phenomena, and they do also very interesting work in the LAGO experiment, where they have to develop their own detectors, electronics, and do everything from scratch, basically. The LAGO experiment stretches along different countries, and there's one station in Colombia. Next slide, please. And so behind or after all the experience gained through all of this participation in all these experiments, there are other initiatives in education and also in applying all this detector physics to other areas. There is all the education initiatives like LA-CoNGA, Se Vale, workshops that the community has done with open data from the LHC, the international master classes, and also the instrumentation laboratory at Los Andes University, or the Muon telescope developed by Universidad Industrial de Santander. All of these are initiatives that have evolved from the work that all the scientists have done on all these major collaborations, and try to go beyond that. Next slide, please. And so that's the summary of all our activities. As I said at the start, this is on behalf of the Colombian Network on High Energy Physics, and I think all the inputs that we sent to this workshop and to this initiative have come from this group of 15 institutions and around 40 physicists doing both work on theory and experiment. This network started not very long ago, 5 years ago, but has been growing steadily for the past 5 years. And we try to do all sorts of activities together, like organizing seminars and talks, and try to bring the work that we do to the community, and also trying to bring awareness to our national funding agencies and our government of the importance of doing this, because as you have seen from this presentation, we take part in a lot of experiments and we do a lot of things, but it's a sum of individual efforts from all the people working on these areas. But we maybe as a country lack some policy and some and that is something that maybe this workshop and these kind of initiatives can help us improve, to have a united policy as a country, and to work together, and to have a clear goal on what is important and what we need to do to reach that goal. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for the presentation. Let me just jump to the next one. And please, Edgar, all yours.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thanks. So I'm going to present this roadmap from the Ecuadorian HECAP groups. So next, please. This is a brief outline. I'll just give a brief overview of the HECAP status in the country, and then talk about the 3 main projects that we have in Ecuador, and how we sort of drafted a future plan. So if you continue, please. So there are 5 institutes in Ecuador that are involved in these areas of high energy physics and related. For some reason, most of them are or all of them are in the highlands. We really don't have a strong tradition in physics, but little by little, and through individual efforts, actually, we have had some important involvement in past experiments like D0 with Professor Bruce Horneisen, for instance. And finally, we are inaugurating our first graduate program in physics. And in the next months, some institutions in Ecuador are going to join the master's program in the context of LA-CoNGA physics. So in any case, over the last few years, we have witnessed a spectacular growth in interest and involvement in these areas. We have also, unfortunately, suffered from brain drain. And what we have discussed, and this has been a really good exercise, is that we want to expand our involvement for the next 30 years or so in the 3 domains or frontiers that people talk about: the energy frontier, intensity, and cosmic frontier. And a lot of this has been possible due to the support of Cenacit, which is our funding agency. The next slide, please. So the first project that I'd like to mention is the CMS experiment. As you know, this is one of the experiments in the LHC. We are members since the end of 2015 with two institutes, EPN and USFQ. We are just a few researchers, and as I mentioned, we don't have graduate students yet, but somehow joining these large infrastructures have allowed us to promote and actually start these graduate programs. So this is very good. We have been involved historically in new phenomena searches, but have contributed as much as we could over these past years on understanding the Higgs field or particle, and also have been involved in dark matter searches. And we, of course, would like to expand this involvement, but also expand our involvement in engineering and the technical fields that are associated, because it's our way of getting back to the society. And this translates into our institutional responsibilities. So Ecuador is involved in the Brill subsystem, where we have certain responsibilities in terms of operations. And lately, as of this year, we're sending two engineers to CERN. The situation has slowed us down, but we're getting there. We have also been quite involved in the data preservation and open access group in CMS, because we believe that this is very important to expand our involvement. And in terms of engineering, there has been contributions for the hadronic calorimeter, which is one of the subsystems of the experiment. Can you go to the next slide, please? We also have recently involvement in the KM3Net experiment. This is a 3-day array of light sensors in the deep Mediterranean Sea. They have two different, well, similar subsystems, but oriented to different physics. Yachay Tech is member since 2019, and essentially is Harold Yepes, who gave the summary talk this morning. And they have exceptional graduates, undergrad students, like most of the institutes in Ecuador. Actually, that's our main asset, perhaps. And okay, apart from physics interest, which involve the neutrino oscillations and characterizing neutrino point sources and so on, they are very keen about developing calibration systems, optical systems. And this translates into what you see here as their responsibilities. So a PMT testing lab, a serious one, is being mounted for these purposes. And also they want to implement a remote control room for the experiment in Yachay. So next, please. And finally, this is the last project we are involved in, is the LAGO project. I'm sure you've heard about this project, a lot about this project, and you will probably still hear about this project. And this is because it's a very important project for most of the Latin American countries, because it has allowed us to attract interest, attract manpower, students. They get to build detectors and experiment by themselves with the smaller scale, let's say, data analysis. And so several institutions joined. We're part of it since 2011. Many, as I said, undergrads have started their careers through this experiment. Actually, there is some interest in physics that you could do with these devices, the water Cherenkov detectors. You can study high energy events, actually, like GRBs. But also using cosmic rays, you can study the solar activity or the magnetic rigidity of the planet, or do some space weather studies. So this has been very important for us. There are some other theoretical efforts in the country, mainly individual people, on the topics that you see here below. And there's some infrastructure for computing, and we are actually equipping or trying to equip some particle physics labs. The next slide, please. So based on these efforts, we sit down and start thinking about this with a few people that are involved in these areas. And we think that it's appropriate to build the plans around the ongoing efforts to cover these three frontiers that we mentioned. And of course, we want to keep working on LHC experiments and support very much the continuity of this project. But also want to be part of the next generation of collider experiments like ILC or FCC. So we would very much like to explore these opportunities. In terms of intensity frontier, we have started with the KM3net with physics and engineering. But I think this could be a door, the initial door to future projects that exploit this part of our exploration of the universe, like joining Dune, for instance, all these long baseline neutrino facilities like Dune or P2O. But also, and this is probably the area we haven't really touched, but at the basic level, is the cosmic frontier. Of course, we have LAGO, more like a motivational project, but very important one. But eventually, we would really want to explore this area of physics because it connects everything. And since our main objective is to find out about how the universe works, then joining a project like the Cosmic Explorer, for instance, is our long-term, one of our long-term objectives. But also, we were discussing that we need to try to bring Latin America to to give it more visibility, maybe. And Andes is a project which could accomplish this. It's a unique, very interesting experiment, and we would definitely support and would like to join eventually. We can twist the arms of our funding officials. We would like to join one of these experiments. So the next slide is my summary, I believe. So as I said, Ecuadorians, we don't have that much tradition in physics or science in general, but some HECAP groups have expanded considerably. And we're part of 3 experiments, mainly KM3net and LAGO project. So we want to expand this involvement and also a step on the experimental cosmology and astroparticle physics. We support the continuity of the next generation of colliders and also recommend or endorse active participation in these experiments, continue participation in KM3net and LAGO. And in summary, I guess we want to cover these 3 frontiers that make the best picture probably of the universe. And also, we consider very important to get more involved in the engineering aspects, the software and computing, different technologies and tools that are being developed now. And because this will translate eventually in knowledge transfer, which is important for our societies. If you don't mind going to the next slide, I would like to invite you all to the next Silafy. Actually, this is an earlier version of my slides, but it's the 13th Silafy, despite what the title says. We couldn't organize it this year because of the situation, but hopefully things will get better, and we will probably see you next year here in Quito. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edgar. So can we call, please, our next speaker, Jorge Molina?
Hi, I will give a brief report about what we are doing here in Paraguay. I am from the Faculty of Engineering, so next, of the Universidad Nacional de Asunción. as you know, Paraguay is not have not tradition at all in physics, but what we are trying to accomplish from the Faculty of Engineering is getting involved mostly in the instrumentation part of all these high energy physics experiments. So we have an instrumentation laboratory that it's working mainly in three areas. That it's electronic engineering, that it's involved in a project in Dune with the SIPMs that we are helping the Brazilian consortium and Latin American consortium with the Arapuca detectors, the readout with the cold and the warm electronics. Also, we are very involved since the beginning, very beginning, with the CONI experiment, working with the CCDs. And also with the CCDs, we are working with the Oscura new project that it's developing in the US. The darkness, that it's the satellite, the CCD that will go in the satellite to measure the sterile neutrinos, try to measure sterile neutrinos. And also we are involved in the SBND experiment, but this is mostly in the software side with the RDAC, data acquisition in this case. We are not only involved in the engineering part, we also have simulations from working with Giant 4. We are working mainly with the CONI experiment, and now we just with the new group collaboration called Violeta with the Argentinian colleagues. And also we are working from the computer part, that it's using machine learning to high energy physics. We have started this, and we have developed a new tool for the CONI experiment in order to measure the muons and the stability and the arrival of muons through the time at the experiment, measuring that the CCDs are measuring there in the Angra 2 nuclear reactor. Next one, please. So this is the slide presented in last May, in May 1, 2019, which is kind of the same thing that I want to stress here, that well, this is the only institution that is working in high energy physics is the engineering faculty. So there's no physics involvement. In the country, we have only one physics career that it's very small amount of students, and they are not encouraging. I mean, they are taking another path that it's not the high energy. They are much more concentrated in the environmental stuff. So that's why there's very few students that that it's encouraging to follow this path. So, well, the funding agency, it's a new one, so they have no tradition. It's in 2012 more or less, but so we don't expect them to help to this kind of project, since what they last year what they start they want to finance only projects that are declared as national priority. So in the sorry, I don't know what happened. Okay. So since then, the mandate of the president of the funding agency finished, that was helping us and was committed to this last free initiative. So now it's one that it's more in that path, that it's that only project that can be applied to industry or let's say society product that they will support. So in the next slide, please. So this is what, even though with this, from the faculty, we are making an effort to still continuing helping in the same path, even without the helping of the agency. We signed an ICRADA with Fermilab. So we just to formalize that all the contributions that of the mutual the involvement of our university with the experiments over there. And one thing that we are starting to move on is to space weather, because as you know, we are in the center of the magnetic anomaly, and this is one of the things that we are trying to understand and monitor very close now. So in that sense, we are working, we are getting the help from the INPE in Brazil, and also we are starting to build here because we are in an engineering faculty, and this is one of the things that the engineer likes to do, is build antennas and all these things, so they can, we can build these kind of things to monitor the ionosphere. That this is one of the things that the faculty it's trying to cover right now. So in the next, so this is my conclusion. So there's nothing.
Thank you very much, Jorge. Thank you. Let me pass to the next one, please. So it's LA-CoNGA physics. So I guess Reina, Jose,
Hi,
as
can
usual,
you hear me?
let me know.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I am muted.
Perfect. Okay, I'm happy to be in this meeting and to present the community and the project LA-CoNGA Physics, which is the Latin American Alliance for Capacity Building in Advanced Physics. And before going into the details of the project, we wanted to have an introduction and an overview of what are the virtual learning and research community, because LA-CoNGA can be categorized within this kind of community. So please, the next slide, Arturo. So as you know, scientific collaboration and actually also education are right now at a global scale. They are globally distributed, collaborative, and multidisciplinary. And this is where the virtual learning and research networks play a key role, because here we are talking about a network of teachers and researchers that can work together on an infrastructure rich in information and communication technologies, and where everything like data, software tools, research facilities, teaching and information resources can be shared. We have been working on this setup for many, many years already, in particular in the field that we are working here, the HEP. And lately with the pandemic, we saw the importance, even more the importance of this kind of collaboration. So here, for example, in this plot, you have the network of collaboration, research collaboration that was established for COVID-19. Next one, please. One or three of the main objectives of these networks is the accessibility, because within the network, you can have institutions and groups that may not have the resources or the staff critical mass that is needed, but together they are much stronger. The other objective is the modernization, because here we're talking about using ICT technologies and virtual technology and digital education. And the third one is the internationalization, because we are talking about training new generations within a collaborative international environment and increasing the diversity in STEM fields. Next one, please. So here we are mostly focusing in high energy cosmology and astroparticle physics, which is actually one of the main thematics area of LA-CoNGA physics. We will have the opportunity during this workshop to see the status of the different efforts in Latin America. And we cannot deny that this particular community and the activities is growing in Latin America in the last decades. Of course, in terms of the human and research resources, the development is country dependent. It's quite variable. And this, of course, has an impact on the training of the new generations. But we have assets, and very important one. We have a diversity of interests, and we have a diversity of skills and competence that are being developed, as we have seen in the forum. And also we have a young generation with much potential, and a young generation that also is very eager to learn and to participate in this kind of activities. This is only summarizing what we have heard already from Paraguay, Ecuador, and Colombia in the previous talks. So together we are stronger, and I'm happy to introduce now what LA-CoNGA physics is and what is its implementation. So LA-CoNGA is an Erasmus Plus project that is co-funded by the European Commission's Education, Audiovisual and Culture Executive Agency. It's a 3-year project that officially started in January of this year, and it responds to the strategy of the different participant institutions that we have within the project, but also to the European Union strategy to promote the capacity building in higher education. We have 11 universities that are participating, 8 in Latin America and 3 in Europe, and we have scientific and industrial partners that are also supporting this project. Among them, we have CERN, CNRS, DESI, ICTP, and COA or IRFU. So what we are proposing here is a 1-year specialization in advanced physics that is integrated into the existing master programs of each of the 8 Latin American institutions that are part of the consortium. So this 1-year specialization program is calibrated on European curricular structure. So basically following the Bologna protocol to facilitate later on the communication between the institutions in participating in Latin America and also in Europe. So let's go to the next one, please. Here you have the consortium, the academic institutions. We have 2 universities, Antonio Nariño and la Universidad Industrial de Santander in Colombia. We have the Universidad San Francisco de Quito and Yachay Tech in Ecuador, Universidad Nacional de Ingeniería and San Marcos in Peru, and Universidad Simón Bolívar and Central de Venezuela in Venezuela. And we have from the European side, Université de Paris, Dresden, and University in Toulouse. And the scientific and industrial partners that we have are CNRS, CERN, DESI, ICTP, Red Clara, and IRFU. We have also several industrial partners in the region. So next one, please. In LA-CoNGA physics, we have 2 thematic areas. One is high energy physics, and the second one is more towards the area of complex systems. Next one, please. And we have 3 axes of competences. Basically, we have the science, and by science, we are referring to theory and phenomenological courses. We have data. So there is a strong focus on the curriculum regarding data science. And the third one is the instrumentation. Next one. So how do we integrate all this? What is the methodology and the platform that we are using and we are putting together within LA-CoNGA? Is the use of an e-learning platform, open access, the use of remote access to interconnected experimental facilities that we will have basically different experimental facilities or instrumentation labs in the Latin American institutions, and they will be interconnected, meaning that the students, for example, in Caracas can access the data that is taken in Lima, or students in Quito can access the data that is taken in Bucaramanga. Our curriculum is oriented to problem solving, and also is distributed in what we call mini modules or small blocks of 2 weeks or 4 weeks. We also pay a lot of attention to the group practices of scientific reproducibility, and there is a part of the program that is related with mobility between Latin America and Europe and within Latin America for academic and for industrial internships. Next one, please. So the way this the program looks, this 1 year of specialization looks like is divided, let's say, in 3 blocks. So we have a first block, a training block, that will be the first 3 months and a half of the year, where we have 3 main syllabus. So courses regarding theory, whether in high energy physics or complex system. And we have, of course, some courses and mini modules that overlap. We have a second block on instrumentation and detectors, and a third one devoted to data science. Then on the second training block, we have the advanced courses, whether in high energy physics, experimental high energy physics, or complex system, more advanced courses in data science. So here the syllabus go to artificial intelligence and advanced courses in machine learning. We have also hackathons and citizen science projects. And then the third part, the third blocks, is what we call professional insertion or the internship. So this internship can be in a laboratory in Latin America, of the part of the institutions that are participating, in a laboratory in Europe, or it can also be with one of our industrial partners. And we have in this block of professional insertion, more or less a 4 months work for the students, because it's 3 months of the internship, but we have a pre-internship preparation and also a network school at the end. So the project is 3 years. So this first year, we are in preparation, preparing the syllabus, preparing the laboratories, the instrumentation laboratories, etc. And we hope that the first courses, we're working towards having the first courses in January 2021, despite the COVID situation. Next one. So the program officially launched 2 weeks ago with a series of virtual sessions. Hablemos de física avanzada, or let's talk about advanced physics. These virtual sessions are taking place every Friday for 6 weeks. So we started on June 26. Usually we have, in the last 2 sessions, we had more than 200 people attending the event. And we invite you, of course, to join us for the next one. The next one actually is colliding with the workshop, but we hope that you can join us in the next one. So you can, we are very happy to show and to discuss more about the project. Next one, please. So our values and our vision. So we strengthen a sustainable, dynamic, collaborative, interconnected and diverse virtual research and learning network that includes the researchers from Latin America and Europe in advanced physics, with close ties to the productive sector. We contribute to the modernization, accessibility, and internationalization of higher education systems in the region, using technology in educational environments. And we envision actually that similar experience can be replicated in other countries in the community and in other disciplines also. So next one, thanks a lot. I'm really happy to present part of the community. We are missing here some of the community members in the picture, but we invite you to check also our website where there is more information. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Reina. So
Arturo,
yes,
we are actually running early.
And, sorry.
No. And Salvatore Mele, who's giving the next talk, he's not here yet. So I suggest to start the discussion, and when Salvatore arrives, we come back to his presentation. Is that okay?
Perfect. Sure.
Okay.
So yes, as it was just mentioned, sorry that I was trying to cash in the Slack channel, but I don't see any question. I don't know if somebody wants to already have a question to some of the presentation or some extra comments maybe that want to add to something that was missing your own presentation because of the time, so can profit of that. I see a question. Sorry, I have 2 different screens, but I see one.
I can read the question for you.
Thank you.
So Ivan Sidonik is asking to you actually, The brain drain that you mentioned has diminished the communication regarding the LAGO groups. Is there a way that we can regain the work with the WCD detectors? We would like to keep the collaboration and revisit the work on physics in LAGO.
Let's say, of course, the first part, yes, absolutely, the brain drain have been one of the key factors of why, you know, the involvement in the Lagos collaboration was decreasing, basically. Also, to be honest, of course, is my understanding, and sorry if I lack some of the details, but in terms of the resources, I mean, economical resources, thin pieces that you have to, you know, buy and put together there. So, but still, the people involved, as far as I know, for example, in Caracas and Merida, the key professors that were working on this are still there. So it will be nice, in fact, to reconnect. We are working closely with them. As I mentioned, the very same professors that are there are the responsible for running the courses like Cevale and other of the outreach programs we have there. So replying to your question, I think it's something that we can trigger again as restart the communication. Most of the key players at that time, again, as far as I know, are still there. And yes, it will be nice. I think this is one of the objectives of this presentation, to let the community that is here today, to let you know that we are there, that they are ready to collaborate, and of course to be continued part of this research adventures, let's say. So yes, will be nice, Ivan. Sorry to get in contact after and maybe address directly to Jose, for example, or Misael in Merida, etc., that can help with that. Hopefully that replied.
Okay. Yes, of course. I don't know if I can.
Sure.
Yeah. One of the it's very nice to see all the LAGO, all involved countries here. Unfortunately, I'm giving the talk about LAGO on Friday, so it's all going to be summarized there. But it's nice to see that we were trying, of course, the last years to regain contact. I understand it was very difficult for everybody, and I'm seeing this as an opportunity to regain the contact, but also to contact other countries that to include them in the LAGO collaboration. So thank you very much for your answer. It was very nice to hear that, and please, let's stay in contact after this and try to start working on that again. Thank you.
Sure. No, thanks. I will, in fact, bother you with more about the contact. And something last comment I can do is that will be nice also, because something that we have there, of course, as for example, Edgar also mentioned, our assets last award was the amount of students. Even with the fact that many people have been moving away, we still have a lot of students there that is eager to learn, eager to participate in this kind of collaboration. And it's something that we know for firsthand because we have been there. So you will maybe very probably find people, professors, but not only, but maybe young people who wants to learn how to manage the equipment that maybe is there, or maybe even start analyzing the data in their own, possibilities, but still be possible.
It's wonderful to hear that. But I will be eager to hear from you after the meeting is over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question for Reina. So yes, the LA-CoNGA initiative is amazing. And so my question is, the courses that you offer, do they also provide a degree to the students, or is just something formal? Is associated to the university? How does that work?
Yeah, so the degree will come from the university where they are registered. So the degree will come from the Latin American universities. So you can see this as a block, like a one-year specialization, but it's included in the master of the universities in Latin America.
Fantastic.
It's,
so
let's say, the second year, the specialization year.
So you have agreements with all these universities for this. That's fantastic.
Yes.
And also the 200 students that you mentioned that attended the virtual lecture, are they mostly from these universities or they are from anywhere?
Actually, mostly from the universities. This was well, due to COVID. The idea was actually to launch the project within, meet everyone together and start pushing forward the project. And with COVID, that was not possible. So we put together these virtual sessions in order to launch the project, but also to start discussing with possible students, the students that will be interested to join next year. And yeah, most of them are from the 8 universities in Latin America.
Thank you.
So if somebody wants to say something else, then it's very rare to have the opportunity to have extra time, so take advantage of that.
Salvatore just arrived.
Okay.
Maybe he wants to give his presentation, then we can come back to the discussions.
Hi, Salvatore. So if it's fine for you, I will pass the slide and you just let me know and go by one. Hopefully.
Thank you, Arturo. Is the audio okay?
At least for me, was a little bit. Can you say something more? Sorry.
Is the audio okay?
Perfect. Yes, thank you.
Fantastic. So thank you for scrolling the slides, Arturo. Thanks to the fact that this workshop was delayed over a few months, now we have the opportunity of discussing the updated, published, and approved by CERN Council strategy for particle physics in Europe. Move on, please. I would like to make a few remarks because these highlight the similarity and the difference between the process that we have been going through at around CERN and the process that we are discussing in this meeting. The first one is the role of the CERN Council, what the European strategy for particle physics is, the first process 2005 and 6 and the update in 2013, the update process that we have been through from 18 to 20 and was also the object of a talk I gave previously to the first instance of this event, and some highlight from the update now. The next slide, please, Arturo. Thank you. The only point I want to make here is to remind all of us that even though CERN is a global laboratory with 14,000 users from dozens and dozens of countries, at the end the decisions are taken by the member states, the 23 member states of CERN, which are all European, and in some parts, some of the associated member states, which are from all over the world. The governance of CERN sits with the CERN Council, which is with the member states, is one country, one vote. And the Council, the next slide, please, has in this context a double role. One role is to allocate the budget for CERN to do its own work. And the second role, which started to be taken into consideration in 2006, at the time of the first European strategy, is for Council to act as a council for the entire European particle physics community. So on the one hand, Council runs a process to create a European strategy for particle physics, which is a bottom-up community-based approach. And on the other hand, after it approves it, Council also allocates and approves the resources for CERN to then implement this strategy. The next slide, please. Within this context, the European Strategy for Particle Physics is a process whereby the European particle physics community sets the priorities of the field, is adopted by the CERN Council, and then gives CERN its own roadmap, as it were, for a 3 to 5 years period. The first process was in 2006. The first update was in 2013. The update was approved just 2 weeks back of 2020. It is important to see that this is a physics-driven bottom-up process, still has an awareness of reality when it comes to financial and technical feasibility. Another important point of the European Strategy for Particle Physics is that creates a roadmap which is aligned with the European, the American, and the Japanese existing roadmaps, and as a consequence optimizes worldwide resources. And clearly the hope is that eventually we would have a Latin American part of this puzzle so that the entire community worldwide can have a common line moving together. The next slide, please. I don't have much time to discuss what was the past. There's only a 10 minutes talk, but it's interesting to take some snapshots. The first particle, the first ESPP exercise was before the LHC, and was really a learning the way the process would happen, but had some very clear deliverables, like the clear ask to the community to set up initiatives for outreach, which was what is now EPOG, which has been touched upon by previous speakers, and knowledge transfer and an explanation of what that's value for society. The 2013 update was a big learning process. So it was a 600 people symposium, hundreds of pages physics briefing book, and roughly the same process which has been followed with the update now in 2020. And this was done at the time in which the Higgs was just being discovered, and set two very clear deliverables that CERN has delivered upon in the time from 2013 to 2018, when the current update started. And the first one is the high Lumi LHC, in which most of us have involved. And the second is how CERN could support the community in Europe and beyond in the neutrino physics program. This is LNDF and this DUNE. The next slide, please. The process for the 2020 update was a very long process, calling in 2018 for scientific inputs. We saw in 2019 a large scale symposium in Granada built on all the community papers submitted at the beginning of 2019, and produced a briefing book in toward the end of 2019. And then the work, as it were, was passed to the European Strategy Group, where CERN member states, laboratories, and invitees had to put all of this together to create a real strategy for the field, which had to be approved in May 2020. It was eventually approved in June, as CERN had to enter a special mode of operation together with its governance due to the COVID emergency. The next slide, please. I think we can skip this slide and go directly to the next one, I think, because what will be interesting to see is the context of the discussion. While the previous strategies had a very clear program, which was the LHC ahead of us, now we had to look, the community has to look, and which is the long-term future, where long-term really spans 40 to 60 years, for machines which could or could not be built in Japan and China, and for all the different kind of machines, linear and circular, hadron and electrons, which could be built at CERN. So the entire idea was having this in mind, looking at the physics requests and the physics necessity and the physics questions on the other hand, and technical feasibility, which has resulted in the strategy. The next slide, please. These are links that I'm sure you've seen. The first one is a strategy per se. It has a companion document which gives more background on the way some and the reasons for which some priorities have been set and which are the rationale behind that. And something which I'm sure you also all have seen late in October last year was the briefing books with all the physics input collated together, which is an incredibly beautiful snapshot of where we are with particle physics today. So what I will do now is to give some highlight from the strategy per se, which might be of interest as we move forward in the process for the Latin American community to set its own roadmap going ahead. Please. One main part is what has really happened from 2013 and which are the scientific priorities of the field. So one thing which definitely has happened is that the high luminosity upgrade of the LHC is underway. And as a consequence, and there's been a success, the technology works and installation is going on. As a consequence, The full physics potential of the LHC and the high Lumi LHC has to be exploited, which includes flavor physics and quark-gluon plasma. This is, in layman term, means not only ultras and CMS will run till the end of the 2030s, the beginning of the 2040s with data analysis, but also, and this is new, LHCb and ALICE with the entire technological challenges that they will have to face to design and rebuild a considerable part of their detectors. The second new thing which has happened since 2013 is that the Neutrino platform CERN works, LNBF and Dune is underway, and CERN commitment to support the European community in long baseline experiments continues. So this is the continuation of the decisions of 2013. The next slide, please. That's the slide. That's the slide. So the high priority future initiative for the field is an electron-positron Higgs factory for all the reasons that we can imagine. The Higgs is an incredibly strange object, and by studying deep its properties, we know that there is much to learn. In the longer term, after an electron-positron Higgs factory, the European particle physics community has the ambition to operate a proton-proton collider at the highest achievable, here the word is achievable, energy. What does this technically mean when it comes to the work which will be done in the next 5 years? Please. The first thing that this means is that we do not actually yet know how we could build such an ambitious accelerator, especially in the Hadron Collider. So what has to be done now is an R&D effort on accelerator technology, high field superconducting magnets to get to the energy where we need to get, and as technology improves, understanding what we can do with HTS, high temperature superconductor, on the one hand. On the other hand, what has to be done now is to understand which are the technical, as discussed, the magnets, and financial feasibility of an hadron collider with a center of mass energy of at least 100 TeV, which could have an electron-positron Higgs factory as a first stage. These studies, whether magnets can or cannot be developed, whether a tunnel under Geneva and France can or cannot be dug, whether there is sufficient global consensus to finance this operation, all of this is to be decided over the next 5 years, which is in time for the next strategy update. That's the most important thing to learn. What we need to do now is to learn the things we do not yet know on the technical feasibility and the financial and governance feasibility of those projects. The next slide, please. As a way to deliver on the accelerator R&D that we need, there must be a way for the European particle physics community to do more of this R&D, to create a roadmap, which is delivered through the accelerator national laboratories in the CERN member states, so that we can get to a point in 5 years to know whether it is technically feasible to move on with a future circular collider with a hadron machine 100 TeV. Next slide, please. The strategy has about 20 extremely important items. Now, in 10 minutes, I cannot cover all of them. I just want to flash that the diversity of scientific activities in the field in Europe is important, as it is a vigorous line of research in theoretical particle physics, and as it is to have coherent, unified, consistent detector R&D programs across the member states and in synergy with other fields. This applies directly for the upgrades at then the last runs of LHC, which will cover other CMS, but now a new LHCb and ALICE plus all the kind of detectors which will need to be able to operate in the condition of a Higgs factory and of a future circular collider. So studies should be coordinated and coherent, which is a bit also the discussions that we are having at these kind of workshops. The next slide, please. The last points I wanted to make are very important organizational points. And it is clear that a project like either a linear or a circular electron-positron, first Higgs factory and then hadron collider, are projects which are unprecedented in terms of costs, scale, and complexity. So from the very beginning, it has to be understood now whether there is, as part of the feasibility study, a consensus across the world with all the potential major partners. And this is a big piece of work that CERN will undertake now under the second mandate of Director Gianotti. And in case, and this is also an important point, a global facility would emerge outside Europe on the same time scale, wherever it will be, CERN could act as a hub for the European participation in this facility, is so discussed. Please, the next slide. From now on, I have all a series of backup slides which have a summary of the first process and the update. I don't think I should go into those because I want to leave time for questions and for further discussions. So I think I stop here. Thank you.
Sorry, it took me some time to get the mute. Thank you so much, Salvatore, again. Roger, at this point, I don't know if you even spend a couple of minutes more on this, or.
But no, we can start the discussions, questions. I think the questions will naturally maybe point to this backup slide.
So again, as we were mentioned before, you know, we have here the Slack channel, or please just raise your hand and let us know.
Hello, this is Federico speaking. I don't know if you see my hand raised.
But we can hear you and see you.
Okay, so I will continue. I have a question and for Salvatore, because you mentioned that the process of writing this strategy started in 2005, which is roughly 5 years after that the European Union has the not only the political unit, but also the monitoring unit, and I wonder that here in Latin America we are far from have a unit in both sense. So, and we are trying to sync a common strategy. So having this in mind, and after having the experience of you showed us, what could be your advice, or what are the key points to bear in mind, but considering this fact that we on behind we have a very spread differences with respect to the European experience.
Thank you, Federico. I think this has to be put in context, right? So what you can see is that the need of a European strategy came in 2006, when it was clear that the LHC was about to be operated. The need for the update in 2013 came to understand what to do next with this machine, which was successful, which resulted in high Lumi. The need for an update of the strategy now comes from the understanding that in this discipline we need decades to be able to have the technology and the theoretical and the physics understanding to have results. So the context that I think it is to be retained here is that in Europe we started cooperating to common machines because no country was big enough to have their own frontier machines, if you wish, in the 50s when CERN was built. So the processes that you see now is a process where a community which knows that can only survive and thrive by cooperating is giving itself the rules in order to set priorities. Now, look at what we are doing with the Latin American Strategy Forum, which is a great initiative of many of the persons who are on the line. What one wants to achieve is to be able to make a difference. Now, to be able to make a difference, one has to understand which are one's assets, what one can do, and which are the places where by acting in a cohesive and joint way, one can have the biggest impact. So if I had an advice, and this is a conversation that I had many times with Marta and many of us have had with many colleagues of CERN have had with the organizers, is to try and understand which are the places and subjects and topics and technologies where the community can work together and have an impact, either by aiming to build facilities which are in reach, or if you wish, leveraging the facilities which are in the continent, or this is my personal wish, to see some key technologies or key impact at one of the CERN programs by groups from all the continent working together, coordinating, and have a much bigger impact than they are having individually so far. So the only message that I can give is that learning how to work together to have a bigger impact is the lessons to take home, if you wish.
Okay, may I add a small thing? And what was, in your view, the weight of having a common facility since the 50s in all this process? I'm thinking, like, I'm dreaming. So let's think of, for example, in our context, Andes could be this facility behind a common process for all the region. Let's suppose that. What is the weight in to gather together all these the strategies of different countries? What is the weight of having a common facility? How is your view regarding this? It's a key point, or it's not?
No, I think it's the entire point. I think it's the entire point. As I try to explain, that's a very interesting point, right? Because CERN is not only a physical place in Europe. CERN is also an organization to which all governments of the member states have signed up to. By the act of signing up to this organization, the governments are working together. And now CERN Council, which is where the governments talk to each other and take decisions, is taking, basically they have two jobs. One job is to decide what the physical facility called CERN does, and the other job was to decide which is a strategy for all of the continent in particle physics. So it's exactly as you are hinting to. By the fact that there is a huge common facility with billions and billions of sunken costs, this has created the opportunities for the community to work together to also take longer-term political decisions. So the existence of a shared facility as an aggregator for the community is clearly what has brought us to this point.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of hands up here. I think first was Ernesto, please, and after Marcela.
Okay, thank you. I have a question to Mele. It's about the European panel. So I'm a little bit concerned of how clear the funding agents takes the message that physics priorities, or let's say different fields of research in physics, are not coincidence with the mainstream projects. I mean, is there any kind of bias in the funding agencies about the recommendations of the physics that should be pursued by the counseling panels, or they can understand that good ideas can just come or open up by a small group of people that does not belong to these pharaonic projects?
It's a matter of scope, Ernesto, if you wish. So the exercise that I've been describing is an exercise that the governments, CERN is an international organization, so governments own CERN. So the governments meet and they have decided that they needed the community of the particle physicists to come up with priorities in a bottom-up approach. I'm not speaking of what an individual funding agency in a government will or will not finance. The scope of the exercise is that the governments altogether, they've asked a complex process which is bottom-up, having different panels and having different actors to come up with priorities and agree on them. And what you see is the result of the process. Then the discussion goes back again at a national level. Every individual government has one or more funding agencies which finance research in physics and other disciplines, which set their own priorities. Obviously, one tries to have some alignments when it comes to particle physics on pushing all countries together toward the achievement of the strategy, because we have done it all together. But this does not mean that countries do not, or individual funding agency can or cannot follow or support any other additional lines in diversity of ideas. And even more so, the strategy very clearly makes the point that there is a vast amount of complexity and diversity in theory and in experiment, a lower energy and synergies with nuclear and astroparticle physics, which is fundamental for the health of the field. So if you want, this is what you're seeing now is, as you call it, the pharaonic part, because since that's big, it has to be done all together. All the other pieces at the side, they are run individually by any agency with the priorities they decide to set.
Thank you. James?
Okay, let me just make a comment on that. No, I understand very well the philosophy of these panels, but my question is, this is not the first time that we have this kind of counseling panel, even in Europe. So this has been done in the past in the United States, Europe, and etc. And my question is, because since I don't live in Europe, I don't have close contact with the policies of the funding agencies. And my question to you is a kind of, if you could realize in the last years or in the last decade, some kind of bias in the sense coming from I know that you cannot answer for individual funding agencies, but what is your, let's say, your feeling in this overall process?
I do not think that there is a net cut between we have to build this big machine and nothing else is done. If you just look at CERN as an example, there is a large variety of experimental programs from all the antimatter and atomic physics all the way to the support indeed to the neutrino and the log baseline. So I think that the aspects you are seeing here is in two pieces. The enormous projects, they need, they have lifespans by now, let's be frank, of half a century or almost a century, and indeed the continuous coordination and concertation of governments and funding agencies. And that's the big part that you see. At the same time, all laboratories have a very wide array of lines of research, which have their own ways of existing in much shorter, much faster timescales. So I do not think that there is a bias. It is obvious that enormous projects which have 20,000 of physicists and technologists and engineers are very expensive, and they, by definition, need an allocation of large amount of resources to be successful. On the other hand, you have projects which have and lines of investigation which are nimble, they are more agile, they are more lean, and therefore most appropriately in the purview of individual funding agencies. So do not have a feeling that there is a bias. And if you actually just see, and I repeat, only the scientific production of CERN, you realize that it's not only LHC, LHC, LHC. On the other hand, there are more papers coming in theory than papers coming out of the LHC, if you just look at that. So I do think there is quite a healthy diversity in the field at the moment, which also means a very large varieties of opportunity for coherent and consistent approach from the Latin American community to chime in and make a difference.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Please, Marcela.
Yes, hello. So I guess this is a bit now off main path. Could have been better before, but after the first comment from Salvatore. I think I wanted just to say that I have been trying to think a lot about this as a Latin American and as a Latin American abroad, and also having experience with CERN, having experience with the European strategy group that I was part of. And I think that, first of all, I would say that I find it amazing that we are all here today, this week, sitting and talking to each other and listening to each other, which in my opinion, or as far as I know, was not something that Latin American scientists have done, I think, so openly and so willing to cooperate. So I think this is an amazing first step. The point I see related to what Salvatore was saying is that, of course, in Latin America, there are all the funding agencies, and each of the groups in each country have to convince their funding agencies. And this makes things much harder because at CERN, of course, there is the CERN Council. And as Salvatore was saying, all the countries basically connect very intimately with the CERN Council, and they, you know, the funding is also connected there, correct? Not to say that when there was the discussion about the European strategy, of course, there were more regional interests that were not always, you know, running in the same direction. But I think that Latin America has two big things that are challenges. One is that there is no CERN at the moment. Hopefully, you know, maybe Andes is the CERN laboratory equivalent for Latin America. That would be amazing. Being international, being open to Latin American countries and beyond. But at the moment, that's not there. So I think that from my perspective, the Latin American scientists need to work much harder than the European scientists or the American Canadian scientists, where you have a big funding agency where you go, correct? And so in the US is the American Physical Society Division of Particle Fields that decides to go for SNOMAS. SNOMAS give input to P5 or HECAP, and HECAP talks to DOE and NSF. At CERN, you have the CERN Council. All the countries have representative in the CERN Council, and so everything is interconnected. Here is a grassroots effort, what we are doing here, I think. And the problem I see, and I don't know if Marta is there or Fernando, but you know, we were invited like over a year ago to talk to CELAC. CELAC is the community of Latin American and Caribbean states, and they have something that is big infrastructures, not in physics in general. But they were, you know, they are interested in the things they are interested in, and not necessarily in the ones that we scientifically and interesting. So I think that we have to take this effort very seriously. You know, we have to think out of the box, and of course we all have our own interests in the different regions of Latin America and own needs. But unless, you know, we come together here and we stick together and try to plan things together from grassroots efforts, because I don't think we have, you know, there are a lot of authorities here and there, but no one is going to represent our interests, because there is no institution like CERN that would represent the interests of Latin American scientists, correct? And so I think that the idea of a big lab in Latin America that could be Andes, if it goes ahead, that would be super helpful, but it's not what we have now. And so I think that we have to be, in my opinion, okay, very careful in basically taking care of this little child that we are giving birth in the past year or two. And I think the scientists, with this effort we have now, okay, and try to build on that, because I think Latin America has a very different situation of anything else anywhere in the world. And so, which is not, there has no centralization, basically. So I know this could be a bit rambling, but I have thought about a lot, and I would love, of course, to see this, you know, flying and making a lot of differences for a lot of the scientists in Latin America. And I think there is an opportunity, and what we are doing here today is unique, and I don't think has ever been done in Latin America before.
Thank you so much, Marcela. I have a couple of hands up. Claudio first. I don't know if it's inside the conversation, but please go ahead. And after I have Ivan. If you are still there, Claudio.
There, okay, thank you. Yeah. So my question is, well, concerning CERN, what do the governments see as a value, you know, to have these joint organizations like CERN? Of course, I'm asking the question much later. This will be a question that would be asked when CERN was just formed. But I suppose there are still politicians there which may ask this question themselves, and they ask it to the community. So this is a question we need to answer here to our politicians, to somehow convince them what the value of this kind of joint you know, initiatives are. I don't know if I was clear with my question, Salvatore.
Sometimes we get lost the microphone. It happened to me many times.
Should I repeat the question?
I think he's not connected.
Yes.
Lost the connection.
Maybe if Ivan can, and we come back to Salvatore after. Because I see.
Okay, I wanted to. Okay. I wanted to talk this on Friday. I don't know if you can stop me when.
Yes, just now, because there is a comment. Sorry, in the chat for Claudio's comment. They said that from Jose Ocariza says, if I may, there is a statement in Reina's talk that addresses the point raised by Claudio. Together, we are stronger. So I guess that's and to help to.
Yeah, but that's not enough. I mean, if you want to convince a particular country, why should I join the other countries to do something, you know, big like this? I have all these other researchers who are asking me for money for biology or for condensed matter, etc., etc. Why should I support your project? What's the benefit for the country? What has been the benefit for other countries to do something like that? That's mainly the question.
Yeah, no, I understand the possibility to use a kind of particular example, you know, something practical that you can show them and say, hey, they did this and it works. Let's try to emulate that good part, let's say.
For example.
Sorry, if I may answer.
I don't know if I can.
Well, I wanted to hear the answer from Salvatore, but sure, Marcela, please.
Yeah, well, since Salvatore is not there, I don't have an answer directly for you, but I have an answer that I think is something I have think it works, or it had worked a little. It had worked with Brazil, it had worked with Peru, it had worked for the US and for CERN, between US and CERN, correct? I mean, when we want to get supported for the Dune experiment, we need to show to DOE that CERN is supporting us, that CERN thinks that that science is important, okay? And that gives us a long leash in our negotiations with our own funding agencies. So this validation from external countries, from external funding agencies or governments is very important. It's very important because you know, I think from Fermila we tried that. I think with Brazil, with you know, Unicamp, I think was a very good experience in my opinion. Of course, the people at Unicamp can say that much better. But you know, we convinced FAPESP that we Fermilab doing Dune thought that what they were bringing to the table, and that was before Arapuca, okay, was very valuable, correct? And so they got validated from us in this particular situation. We also get validated from, for example, from CERN, from Canada, and from Latin American countries. When we see, you know, when we show to DOE that Latin American countries are willing to invest in the science we are doing, correct? When they may have other priorities in their infrastructure and necessities. And CERN is the same thing, correct? CERN needs to have the US supporting LHC and LHC upgrades, correct? Because then it goes to the council. And so it's really, you know, giving each other the hand. And that's what I was saying. I think Latin America has a very different situation, but this globally works to make your funding agencies and your government feel that your science is relevant, and it's very useful for that to see that these other countries, which are interesting for them in some way, are also valuing the science you are doing. And this works like gold, in my opinion. I mean, it really helps in ways you cannot think of. At least I didn't think of.
Yes.
That's my.
But I understand. But say it's what I want to ask is, say yes, there are all these countries that value the science that we do. But the question is, my question is, what do those countries value on the science we do?
Well, there are different things, correct? They are building capabilities. Many people that are built in high technology, not all of them will stay in academics. They will go to industry. They are excellent problem solvers. So you can go and do the whole list of very well developed in some countries now by I'm so sorry. Yes. I'm so sorry. I have a call from a physician. So, hello, 1 second, please. So what I'm trying to say, Claudio, is yes, you can do a list of all the things that are very interesting, okay, that you can sell your funding agencies and your government, and there is a list. You know, the US has developed that because the OE pushes for that enormously, okay, more than any other country, I think. But what you need is to say, you know, I'm not only valuing your country, I'm putting my people and my resources in that same science, because I think it's good for the science, good for developing technologies, good for developing capabilities and people who are excellent problem solvers and will go and help society in so many different ways.
Yes, okay, we have said that. That's good.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
I would like to say a comment, please, on that, because you saw a couple of times today the Lago map. I am the PI of Lago. I will going to present it on Friday, and was thinking to make an emphasis on this subject properly. So one of the things that I encountered when I started to work on this on Lago is that we have there is no global funding. Lago has no possibility. Lago, you saw the map, is spread since Mexico, from Mexico to even to Antarctica. So we have a lot of sites, like 30 sites in 10 countries, a lot of institutions, and we depend on every institution that can ask for its own government for funding, and there are a lot of institutions that cannot make it, and it's very hard to work in that conditions. So we depend on many little things that can join together, and we work as a collaborative network. So when one of us gets some hardware, we can distribute, and there is other who develop some software, but there is no way we can run like that smoothly. So there is no one person that can ask for its own country or say to its own country, you have to attend this kind of physics. We need to have something bigger, like it's going to be probably Andes, but something like that. So now try to come up with something like a consortium that says, okay, to all the countries at once, that say, this is what we value the most, this is what we think is important, and this is what we think in some order that you must put your money on, because that's what they do. And in Europe, on the US, they are not going to take care of us. We can make joint programs, we can work collaboratively, we can work together, we can do a lot of things, but in the end, we need to have our own agencies, our own things to ask. We need to have a consortium to ask the agencies of Latin American countries to put the minds and the money on different things. So it's a very big problem. It's not like it's something that we need to come up with. And if you see, Lago is the perfect example on how we suffer this. So I don't want to make a cry on this, because we have made a lot of things during these years, even if we don't have this global funding. But I think this is the most important thing that I would like to emphasize. We need something that comes up with a global strategy like we are doing now. I think this is an excellent opportunity for that.
Thank you, Ivan. I see also Marta raised the hand and Salvatore replied in the chat, so I think that everybody can read that. Marta, please.
Yeah, I think that Salvatore is making a couple of very important points. So even he seems to have some problem with his mic. And his first point, I think, is really that we all know that we need to continuously argue for the benefits of investing in science per se. That's full stop. But the other thing is, again, and it goes back to something that he insisted upon quite a bit during his presentation, is how do we do this science in a way that we have a very strong scientific case, that we are able to communicate what are the benefits and the spillovers of investing in science more broadly, and how it actually is an opportunity for us to leverage and bring out a much stronger impact. on the results and the contributions from all of our groups. And this has to do a lot with the capacity building that has actually occurred over the last 20 years in Latin America, in which we are now in a position to be able to develop a strategy unlike any other time before. And maybe it's the first time that we're going through these discussions in depth to identify not only the level of activity, but the expertise that we are having in the different technologies, the capability of developing significant leadership projects in the region as well, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the whole goal of this discussion. I also want to make one small point in addition to this, and it is that not necessarily do we have to think of one centralized facility. Some of the distributed facilities are also very important. And this could be something that we actually turn up realizing that will be actually of a huge benefit. But what is the driver there, again, is what is the strong scientific case behind that. So as long as we're able to keep that clarity, I think that we'll be able to push forward. It's going to be difficult, it's going to be hard, but as Marcela said, we just have to continuously stick together.
Thank you, Marta, also. I have a couple of hands here. Guillermo first, please. Ken?
No, I just wanted to make a comment of what Claudio was asking, right? I mean, from my perspective, a way easy for the particle community to give or to retrieve the society is by, it has been always by the development of a fast system or big data handling, right? Those are the main things that I have been, that are technological developments that are coming always from the high energy physics. Also, in that sense, the sensor technology development, right? So I think those are three topics that are coming from the particle physics community that can be put as an argument for the agencies of how to this community, this scientific community will impact in the sustainability of the countries, right?
Sorry, looking for the microphone also. Thanks, Guillermo. I saw, yes, Salvatore, please. I don't, maybe you recover the microphone. I see your hands up.
Yeah, does it work now?
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. As I put in the chat, trying to answer to Claudio before, it is clear that we have several pieces of the conversation, and we should be very careful not to conflate them together. It is obvious that historically Europe is in a different trajectory than Latin America, both in the how long this community has been active, how long the countries have had to stick together and work together, and the fact that there exists a central facility. And I think one should unpick these three parts, because what we have here is how long the community has been active, and Latin America now has a very thriving, diverse, and very strong community. Smaller in number, but in no way smaller in potential than the European one. The second part is how long the countries have been working together, and that's, yes, of course, it's not at the same level of depth, even though there are clearly examples in the future, possibly as Andes and with Auger previous cases of the community working together. And the last part is whether there is a shared facility, not yet, and not decided set. But as Marta was saying, to me the point here is rather a question which is at a meta level. How by working on a joint project, one can have an enormous impact, much bigger than working at an individual university or even an individual country level. How by attacking the problems where there is shared technology or the potential to do R&D or physics across the different universities in a country one can have a much bigger impact than doing it alone, and how then this helps making the point with the governments individually in a single country and in the region. And you see, the last thing that we said, and many others have said just in the last half an hour, it doesn't depend on whether there exists a facility in the continent or not, or whether there is a tradition of the government of the continent to cooperate or not. It is obvious that if we all push in a few key directions together, we are going to have a much bigger impact. That is a fact. From this descends the fact that governments might start to pay attention, because then the impact is evident. So again, I would suggest that we take the advantage of the work which has already been done by the P5 process in the States and by the European process now for the third time over CERN, on knowing pretty clearly which are the scientific priorities of the field. On the accelerator and collider-based physics, it's quite clear which are the large-scale projects between Fermi and CERN, which are happening and or will happen, with possibility of others in China and Japan. So to me, the next step is to ask oneself the question on how, in the particular physical collider and accelerator-based physics, one can have a much stronger and bigger impact by pooling expertise and resources and picking up some key R&D projects, of which there are enormous amount open, to really make a difference. And then go to governments with this very, very clear picture in mind. Rather seeing it from the end, if you wish. That's a bit an overall comment I wanted to make. I don't want to speak much.
Thank you so much, Salvatore, again. And yes, we are exactly at the time for the end of our discussion session also. Just I see the last hand from Jose Ocariz, so please, Jose, you are the last one here for us.
Okay, so just to complement several things that have been done, another approach is to reach out to communities at large in our countries. Let the society know what the scientists are doing, what impact this can have in their own lives. We can build specific examples, for example, low-cost citizen science projects at high schools that provide data-driven inputs to questions they need to address. Local issues, healthcare, environment issues, etc. And these are things in which our universities can really play an important role.
Thank you so much. So I mean, to get the public in our favor also, yes, so, obviously that's important. So thanks again for all the intervention, obviously the presentations. Thank you so much. The discussion. Sorry that, of course, we are in very different time zones, so I just we need to wrap up right now. Thank you, Rogero, for your assistance also, everybody.
Thank you, Arturo, and everybody. So I see you guys tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Have a good afternoon, night, all of you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you.